I will say it is a great zechus Baruch Hashem to learn today with you. I'm sorry that I'm not there with you in person, but at least the Yahrzeit Hashem will get to learn together virtually. So we are picking up, today's daf is Kuf Samech 160, but we are picking up in Yahrzeit Hashem on Kuf Nun Tesma Beis 159b, about 12 lines up from the bottom. Remember, again, we began the story yesterday of the property of Bar Sisoy. So the Gemara says, let's just start the story from the beginning again. A man said to his friend, Nichsei de Bar Sisin mizabnina locha. So Reuven says to Shimon, I'm selling you the property of Bar Sisin. So it's called selling the property of Bar Sisin. So they had what happening. Bar says, Bar Sisin. So Reuven had to have a piece of property that was called the estate, the property of Bar Sisin. Amrle, ha lav debei Bar Sisin ve'ikruyehu de mekarye debei Bar Sisin. So Shimon's obviously ready to take possession of this parcel of land. Reuven says, no, that's not it. I know that's called Bar Sisin, but that happens to be called Bar Sisin for a different reason. I'm selling you the piece of property that I bought myself from Bar Sisin, and this property is not the one. So Shimon's claiming the property that's called Bar Sisin is the one that he bought from Reuven. Reuven's claiming that he sold Shimon a different parcel of land that he bought from Bar Sisin. Why is the first parcel of land called Nichsei de Bar Sisin, Bar Sisin property? That was the name of it. That's the name of the estate. So Rav Nachman, so the Reuven and Shimon come to Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman said, the din is with Shimon. Din is with Shimon. Shimon gets to take the property called Nichsei Bar Sisin. Amar li Rav Nachman, Dina hachi, hamotzi mechaber lavaraya. Rav said, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Reuven is one who's muchsak. Reuven is one who has the property. So at the end of the day, if Shimon wants to extract the property from Reuven, the burden of proof is upon Shimon to prove that parcel A was in fact the Nichsei Bar Sisin that they agreed that Reuven would sell to Shimon. But why would you just award it to the purchaser? So the Gemara said, V'rami d'Rava d'Rava, v'Rav Nachman d'Rav Nachman. So we'll say, interestingly enough, the Gemara points out over here that there seems to be a contradiction in positions. That again, so Rava over. So what was that? Rav Nachman contradicts himself and Rava contradicts himself. There we go. Here we go. The Gemara says, "Dahuda amrei lechabrei ma bois b'hai beis." The Gemara tells another story. Reuven comes over to Shimon. Reuven says, "What are you doing in my house?" Amrei minoch zabinta va'achalt shnei chazaka. Shimon says, "What are you talking about, Reuven? I bought it from you, and not only that, I've been living here for 3 years." I've been living here for 3 years. You never said a word. So not only did I buy it from you, but I also resided here for the amount of time to establish a chazaka. Remember, it was a better chazaka days. So what's the halacha? So Reuven says, listen, first of all, I was living here also the whole time. I was living in one of the inner rooms, and I never said anything. I never objected to you being here because whatever. I felt like I didn't have to, because since I was residing here, therefore you cannot establish a chazaka. So Shimon's claiming that he lived there 3 years uncontested. Reuven's claiming it wasn't uncontested. You're right, I didn't say anything because I didn't have to say anything. The only time I have to make a machaz is if I wasn't there, but I was living in one of the inner rooms. So the Maisa again, the property is not yours. So let's tell Nachman. So they brought the case once again before Rav Nachman. Amrlei zil bar achilascha. So interestingly enough, in this case, so Rav Nachman said to Shimon, the person who was living there for 3 years, claimed it was his, that he bought it from Reuven. Go ahead and clarify that. Clarify that the burden of proof is upon you, Shimon, to prove that halacha l'maisa, you lived there 3 years uncontested and Reuven wasn't there. In other words, you prove that you bought it and you prove that you used it for 3 years uncontested. Amalei Rav Nachman, Dina havi. So Rav said to Rav Nachman, is this the halacha? I am mutzi mechavero alav erayo. To which the Gemara says, Kasha de Rava, Kasha de Rav Nachman. So both say, so Rav and Rav Nachman are both go ahead and contradict their previously aforementioned positions. To which the Gemara says, no, the Rava ad Rava lo Kasha. Rava is not a contradiction. How so? Hacha, both say, in the case of the Nichsei Bar Sisin, Mocher Kai B'Nechasei. So in the case of the Bar Sisin property one, Shimon was already in possession of the property. Hasam, so therefore again, Rava would say, Amotzi mechavir lavaraya. Rava would say Shimon is the one who's in possession, and therefore Reuven is the one who wants to extract. Therefore the burden of proof is upon him. Hasam lokeach kai b'nechasei. I'm sorry, just the opposite. In the case of Bar Sisin, it was the mocher, it was Reuven who was in possession, and therefore Rava says, Shimon, if you want to extract it, Shimon's the purchaser, if you want to claim that this was the Bar Sisin property, the burden of proof is upon you. Hasam lokeach kai b'nechasei. But in the case, ultimately, again, of Reuven and Shimon, where Shimon claimed that Reuven sold it to him, and Shimon lived there 3 years uncontested, and Reuven claims that halach l'maaseh he was there, again, the purchaser, Hassan Lokeach, there, Shimon ultimately, again, was holding on to the property. Shimon was in possession. Rav Nachman lo kasha. Rav Nachman is not contradicting himself. How so? Hacha kevan darmele debei bar sisin, umekai debei bar sisin, Ale didei ramya legaluye delav debei bar sisinhi. Nachman will say this. We'll say in the case of the bar sisin case, Reuven says to Shimon, "I'm going to sell you nichsei bar sisin." So Reuven has a piece of property that's called nichsei bar sisin. Now he's claiming, no, it's not this property; it's something else. You know what, Reuven? How many pieces of property do you have that are called bar sisin? The burden of proof is upon you. It's upon you, Reuven, to show that this is not the property, because just circumstantially, it would appear you said you were going to sell nichsei bar sisin. This is nichsei bar sisin. Nothing else to talk about. Nothing else to talk about. Therefore, again, Rav Nachman rules that the burden of proof is upon the seller. However, hacha lo yehei ela dinokit shtara. But again, in the case of where Shimon's claiming that he bought the property from Reuven, and Reuven's claiming that he was there, so Shimon is no stronger than someone ultimately, again, who has a shtar. So what do we say again? When someone has a contested shtar, what do we say? Okay, so go establish your shtar, kiyim shtaros. The burden of proof is upon you to show that the transaction is actually valid. So therefore, it turns out Rav and Rav Nachman are not contradicting each other or not contradicting themselves, but rather, again, two different cases. We'll say, Hadron Aloch, Mishames. Mazel Tov, and what a great zechus to begin the new parak on Rosh Chodesh Haba Aleinu L'Tova. So we begin now, Daf Kuf Samech, the 10th parak of Bava Basra, Get Poshet. Get Poshet. Edav Misocho, Mekushra Edav Me'achor. So we'll see here, we're going to spend some time talking a little bit about different types of shtaros. Now the Rashbam points out, look at the Rashbam, he says, Shtar Poshet Ke'in Shalonu, She'ino Tav from Mekushra L'Kamon. The kol shtaros kruyin get. So the Rashbam comes along and he says, we know that we're conditioned when we think about a get, we think about a divorce document or an emancipation document. But in fact, in this particular context, get refers to a document. First, a document, the Rashbam says, the kol shtaros kruyin get. All documents are called the get. The get chov shein bo achrayis v'chein begite. Fine. So therefore, the Mishnah introduces us to this idea that there are two different types of documents. There's what's called a get pashat and a get mukusher. Now we're going to see the differences between them in just a moment. The Rashbam said, the Mishnah says get pashat edav misocho. So on a regular document, the witnesses sign on the document itself. So there's the writing. Remember again, every document has really two parts. There's a torah or a tovos and a torah. A tovos is like the boilerplate, same thing in every document. TORAH is the transaction-specific, party-specific piece. So in a regular get push, in a regular document, you have all of the information, and the witness is signed below the information. On a get makushar, and again, we'll discuss exactly what that means, the witness is signed on the back of the document. Pashat, shekasva misocha. First of all, take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. So the Rashbam says, Mekushar. So a get pashat, I understand. That's just a typical shtar, like we have been used to seeing and learning about all of this time. You have the information, below the information, the signature of the witnesses, and Shalom Yisroel. What is his get Mekushar? If you look at the Rashbam, Mekushar Edav Me'achorav, the Rashbam says, he says, Kosev Shita Umaniach Chelek Keshir, Shita Ksuba, V'kofla ala Chalak V'tover. So the way a get Mekushar works, like it's according to the Rashbam right now. You write a line of text, and then a blank line. A line of text, and then a blank line. And then between every line of text, with that blank line, you make a fold. You make a fold. So, Kosev Shita Umaniach Chalak Keshir Shita Ksuba. So you write one line, then below that line of writing, you leave a line blank. The kofla ala chalak, and you then you fold the shtar on the blank line, v'tofer, and you tie it up, you sew it up. Again, we'll discuss why you need a shtar like this. Then you write another line, leave another line blank, and you keep on doing this. And on every blank one, you're sewing it up. V'kofa ala chalak v'tofer v'chein harbe k'dei makom toref hashtar v'idim chosim v'chutz. So we're going to see that halacha l'maisa, so the witnesses would sign on the back side of that shtar. We'll see exactly where. Somewhere in the folds over there, they would go ahead and sign. Now the Rashbam points out over and he says, "V'tovos shal shtar kasav kulo ke'in pashut." Now, even in a get makushar, the folded part would be what we call the TORAH, right? The transactional specific, party specific, but the boilerplate would then be written on an unfolded part of the shtar. Fine. So therefore, again, back to the Mishnah, get pashat eda misocha makushar eda me'achora. So regular document, the witness is just signed on the front side of the shtar. A get makushar, the witness is signed on the back of the shtar. Pashat shekasva eda me'achora, makushar shekasva eda misocha shnei psulin. Now, what if you swapped? Say if you have a regular get and the witness is signed on the backside, regular document, the witness is signed on the backside, or a get makushar, where the witness is signed on the same side as the writing, psulin. Such a shtar is possible because you're deviating from the way that such a shtar is written. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer makusher shekasvu eda misocho kasher b'bnei sheyachal asos pashat. Rabbi Chanina disagrees. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel says, no. If you have a get makusher and you accidentally went ahead and had the witness's sign on the front side of the document, the same side as the text, but the document will be kasher. Why? Because you could always make a makusher into a pashat. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Hakol K'vena Gamdina. And again, we're going to define all of this in the Gemara. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says everything is based on local custom. Get pashat eid b'shnayim makusher b'shlosha. A regular document has 2 witnesses. A get makusher has a minimum of 3 witnesses. Pashat shekasu bo eid echad u'makusher shekasu bo shnei eidim. So if you have a regular document and you only use 1 witness, or a get makusher and you use 2 witnesses, both of these documents, shneihen psulin. Beautiful. So we'll say, let's analyze. Minhani mili. So first thing, says, 1 second. Where does this concept of the get makusher come from, right? In other words, where have you been my whole life? My whole life, what does a shtar look like? Shtar is writing, tovos Torah, or Torah tovos, whichever one, right? Boilerplate, transactional specific verbiage, and then signatures of witnesses. Now, so you're being introduced to this new form of document where line of writing, blank line of writing, blank line. On every blank line, you fold it, you sew it, witnesses are signing on the back. Where does this concept of this type of shtar come from? Says so Amr Bechini, the Amr Krav, Pasuk says, the Gemara quotes over the pasuk from Yirmiyahu. Sodos bakesef yiknu, v'kasa b'sefer v'chasom, v'a'id edim. So remember again, just to give you context, Yirmiyahu Hanavi is telling Klal Yisrael they're going to go into Galus, and he tells them that before they go into Galus, purchase fields, purchase real estate, because we're going to come back to Eretz Yisrael. Purchase real estate because we're going to come back to Eretz Yisrael. And then ultimately, again, he says to them, and record the transactions in the document. Sados bakesef yiknu v'kasov b'sefer. So when the pasuk says purchase fields for money, and record the transaction in a document, Amud Beis, Kufs 160b, zeh pashat. So we'll say that refers to what we call a get pashat, just a regular document. V'chasom, now when it has that extra phrase, v'chasom, sign, because we'll say obviously, chasom is obvious. A document is only meaningful if it has signatures. So why does they have to say, sign it? Sign it must be that there's another type of document that's being alluded to in the pasuk. What's the other type of document? Zemakusher. This ultimately again refers to a get makusher. Okay, v'ha'ed. And when the pasuk says aid, v'ha'ed, shnaim, that refers to 2 witnesses. And it should be witness, that refers to 2 witnesses. Eidim, then when he uses the plural, shlosha. HaKetzad. So how do you know which type of document uses 2, which uses 3? HaKetzad. Shnayim lapashad, shlosha lamakosher. Pasuk's teaching me that again. So this pasuk is teaching me, number 1, about 2 different types of documents: a get pashat and a get makosher. It also teaches me that again, a get pashat uses 2 witnesses and a get makosher uses 3. I don't understand. Well, you could just as easily say that a regular get. There's nothing specific in this drasha. You could just as easily see that a get makosher. A get makusher uses 2 witnesses and a get pashat uses 3. Now the Gemara says, since a get makusher has more folds, it makes sense that there's going to be more signatures. As we're going to see, those folds lend themselves to places for signatures. So since a get makusher has all of these folds, it makes sense that it has more signatures, whereas a get pashat doesn't have these folds and therefore it doesn't get the signatures. So this is the first approach. Rafram disagrees. He says, Mihacha, he has a different approach. Ve'ekach es sefer hamakne, ve'es hachosum, hamitzvah v'achukim ve'es hagoloi. See here again, Gemara is also quoting from the pasuk in Yirmiyah. So this is Yirmiyah himself making his own real estate transaction. He's buying his own real estate. And he says, Ve'ekach es sefer hamakne, I took the document of purchase, es hachosum, that which is signed, hamitzvah v'achukim ve'es hagoloi. So it says, the Gemara, what's going on over here? He says, when I took the document of acquisition, zeh pashat. That refers to just a regular document, what we call a get pashut. Es hachosum, the one that is signed, ze mekusher. This refers to a get mekusher. The es hagalui, the one that is revealed, ze pashut shebe mekusher. This refers to the part of a get mekusher that is pashut. Now, we'll say, what does that mean? So this goes back to the Rashbam in the Mishnah. Even a get mekusher, it's not totally folded. The top part that has the torah is folded, but the bottom part that has the toe face is left regular. So even a get mekusher has an element of it that is left pashut. Okay, ha-mitzvah v'achukim. So we'll say, so what does it mean, mitzvah v'achukim? Literally, again, the details and the statutes. Elu dvarim shebein pashut l'makusher. This refers to the distinctions between a get pashut and a get makusher. I ha-kitzad. So we'll say, wherein lies there between a get pashut and a get makusher? Ze edav shnayim v'ze edav shlosha. A get pashut has 2 witnesses. A get makusher has 3 witnesses. Ze edav misocho v'ze edav me'achorav. Get pashut, the witness is signed on the front side of the document, and a get pashut and a get makusher, the witness is signed on the back side of the document. I ve'epachana. How do you know? Maybe it's just the opposite. Maybe by a get pashut, the witness is signed on the back side. By a get makusher, the witness is signed on the front side. Mitoch shnisraba b'ksharav nisraba be'edav. No. Since there are more folds, by definition, the folds lend themselves to additional signatures of witnesses. Incredible. Okay, so we'll say, so that's another approach. Now, interestingly enough, the common denominator, by the way, between Rabbi Hanina and Raphael is they're both learning it out from the real estate transactions conducted by Yirmiyahu Hanavi. First opinion is saying it's from Yirmiyahu's instructions to Klal Yisrael. The second approach says no, it's from Yirmiyahu's own actions within his own real estate transactions. Rabbi Yecheskel disagrees. He says as follows: Api shnayim edim or api shlosha edim yakum davar. So Rabbi Yecheskel goes in a different direction. The pasuk says halachas of testimony. The Torah is speaking about eidos. So the Torah says, literally, again, you can't accept the testimony of one witness. Api shnayim edim or api shlosha edim yakum davar. Literally, by the testimony, by the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses, the matter shall be established. So the Gemara says as follows: In tiskayim edusa mishnayim lama part lecha b'shlosha. So the Gemara has a good kasha. If we know that ultimately, again, testimony is established through 2 witnesses, why is there even a need to mention 3 witnesses? Lomar lecha shnayim lepashut shlosh l'makosha, to teach me that halacha l'maisa, different witnesses serve different needs. 2 witnesses are for a get pashut, 3 witnesses are for a get makosher. Incredible. I ve'epachana, but maybe not. Maybe it's just the opposite. Maybe it's 3 witnesses for a get pashut, 2 witnesses for a get makosher. Mitoch shenisraba b'ksharab nisraba be'edav. Now the Gemara says no, because since there are more folds, by definition, it lends itself ultimately again to more signatures of witnesses. Okay, so therefore both sides, it turns out that, remember again, the Gemara is trying to figure out what is the source for this concept of get makusher, and the Gemara essentially gave us 3 different approaches. Rabbi Hanina from Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Raf from Yirmiyahu Hanavi, and Rabbi Yecheskel from the pasuk on Eidos. But the Gemara says, 1 second, pump the brakes here. V'hani lahachi hu da'asu, kol chad v'chad l'milsi hu da'asa. So the Gemara says, 1 second. Each of these psukim that have been quoted are used for other drashos. They're used to teach us other things. So if they're used to teach us other things, how could they be used to teach me about get makusher? So the Gemara says, l'chidisanya. Now the Gemara shows what each of these psukim is in fact used for. L'chidisanya. Sados b'kesef yiknu v'kaso asefer v'chasom. When Yirmiyahu Hanavi tells Klal Yisrael, this was the first approach. Yirmiyahu Hanavi tells Klal Yisrael, purchase property and record your property, record your deeds, record your purchases in a deed. So the Gemara says, Eitz atova kamash malan. Yirmiyahu Hanavi was just giving Klal Yisrael good advice. What's the good advice? You're purchasing real estate. You better make sure that it is recorded. Now, I will say, now just a word about this, because there's incredible profundity in this. Remember, Klal Yisrael is about to be exiled. And Yirmiyahu Hanavi says, even though you're about to be exiled, I'm telling you, purchase property, purchase real estate, as the ultimate display of hope, confidence, and optimism that we're coming back. Is this not the power of the Jew? That literally, again, we're moments, so to speak, metaphorically, moments before exile, moments before destruction. And Yirmiyahu Hanavi says, okay, what does the Yid do when he stands on the threshold of destruction? He already begins the process of rebuilding. This is the strength of our people. This is the power of Klal Yisrael. So the Gemara essentially says, this wasn't really a halachic statement. This was an Eitz Tova. Two things. Number one, there was a hashkafic statement. Buy property now because we're coming back. Buy property now because in Eretz Hashem it's going to be great. Buy it now because we are coming back. And, by the way, record it in a document because we might be gone for a little while and you want to make sure that you have some type of documentary proof that you are indeed the titular owners of this real estate. Okay. The Ekach is Sefer HaMakneh, HaChayav Maisa. In the next, the pasuk quoted by Rafram, where Yirmiyahu was conducting his own real estate purchase, and he says, I recorded in a document, so the Gemara just says, Yirmiyahu is just telling a story. He's actually not coming to teach halacha, he's telling a story about what actually happened, right? That he bought property from a relative, and he recorded in a document, Api Shnayim Eidim O Shlosha Eidim, Lahakish Shlosh L'Shnayim B'Plukted Rabbi Akiva V'Rabbanan. So what about the last source, right? Rabbi Baruch Heskel, who quotes from the pasuk of, based on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, the matter will be upheld. So the Gemara says that pasuk is important for a different reason, based on the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Rabbanan. Now, what is that? Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Rashbam says, from that pasuk is very important. That pasuk, the Gemara darshans the whole idea that the fact that the Torah equates 2 witnesses to 3 witnesses indicates that halacha l'maisa 2 are like 3. So there's a lot of applications of this. Perhaps the most famous application of this is Eidu shebatla miksasa batla kula. If you have 2 witnesses and one of them gets disqualified, obviously the whole testimonial unit falls apart. The same is true if you have 3 witnesses. So what if you have 3 witnesses, and let's say one of the witnesses becomes disqualified? You might be tempted to say, you still have 2 valid witnesses, it should be fine. Kamash malo, no. Eidu shebatla miksasa batla kula. Whenever part of a testimonial unit ultimately again becomes invalidated, the entire testimonial unit becomes invalidated. So that's the hekish. So in other words, I need that pasuk. And again, there are other applications of it also, but the Gemara says I need that pasuk for something else already. So we'll say, so here's the problem. We brought 3 different opinions as to what is the source for get makusher. And now effectively what we've just done is we've gone ahead and we've essentially discounted all of them and said, no, they're all used for something else. If, as such, we're left with the glaring question, what is the source for get makusher? To which the Gemara says, Ella makusher midrabanan ukraya smachta ba'alma. Right? The concept of get makusher really is a din dirabanan. It's a rabbinic law. There is no ukraya smachta ba'alma means. In other words, a lot of times Chazal will make a halacha and they'll find a scriptural allusion for their halacha, but it's a dirabanan. So there is no da'oraisa concept of get makusha. Mid'oraisa, there's one type of get, the get pashit. Get pashit. A get makusha was a rabbinic innovation. Why did the rabbis do it? For time of takin rabbana makusha. Why did the rabbis create this type of concept of get makusha? Is incredible. Asra de kahani havu, because there was once a city of Kohanim, a place of Kohanim. V'havu kapti tuvo megarshtin shayot. This is absolutely incredible. The Gemara says these Kohanim had a short fuse. Now remember, the Gemara tells us, Chazal tell us that Kohanim ragzoninheim. Kohanim are easy to anger, and they have a short fuse, intense temper. I'm about to say just about that. Why are Kohanim marked by that? What's the pshat? So first of all, by the way, we already see this, right? We see this again. We're going to see this in a couple of weeks in the Parshios, where Shimon and Levi, after Dinah was abducted and defiled by Shechem, Shimon and Levi go and they wipe out all of the men of Shechem. So remember, Levi, this is Shevet Levi. Levi is the Shevet of Kahuna, Leviah. So that passion is already there. The idea that Kohanim get angry is a derivative of passion, right? What is anger? Anger is a misuse, it's a misappropriation, it's like a hijacking of the midah of passion. Passion is powerful. We just spoke about this on Shabbos, about how powerful passion is and how important passion is and how incredibly necessary it is to bring a sense of passion to everything in our Yiddishkeit. When passion is misdirected, passion easily becomes anger. So anger, and like almost like zrizos, are like 2 sides of the same coin. If you direct your passion the right way, you're a zaris. Maybe even a healthy kanoi, like good zealotry. If you direct it in the wrong way, then it becomes kas. So Kohanim are much more prone to anger. Then what would happen? These Kohanim, they'd have a short fuse, they get into a fight with their wife, and they would divorce their wives. What's the problem? So under normal circumstances, if a man divorces his wife and he feels maybe he made too hasty of a decision, as long as she did not yet marry anyone else, he can remarry her. Kohanim, once a Kohen divorces his wife, she's a grusha, she's a divorcee. Even though she doesn't marry anyone else, he's not allowed to marry her. He Can't remarry her. So Kohanim in the heat of the moment would divorce their wives because of some argument, then afterwards regret it, but then they were stuck. So Chazal created this elongated form of a divorce document. And what was it? You wrote a line, blank line, fold it, sew it. Wrote a line, blank line, fold it, sew it. The witnesses sign on the back. All of this was to create a protracted process. Because what would happen? They would calm down. And when they would calm down, they would recognize this is foolish. And at the end of the day, they would not divorce their wives over pettiness. Incredible. Which is trying this most Haskalim is also, which is sometimes the way to avoid making mistakes is to just pump the brakes a little bit. You know, the Sifrei also write this idea that sometimes I'm faced with a desire to do something. And so we often think that when faced with the desire to do something, they have all this saying, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. That's great. But what if a person says, I can't do it? So sometimes the best thing you could do is to say, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it in 5 minutes. I'm going to do it in 5 minutes. I'm going to commit the Avera. Whatever the Avera is, I'm doing it. I made up my mind, I'm doing it. But I'm not doing it now, I'm doing it in 5 minutes, starting now. And something amazing happens at Sifrei Moshe, right? Which is that often you could overcome the Yetzer Hara. Because the way the Yetzer Hara works is, it gets me to sin in the heat of the moment. If I could pump the brakes a little bit, just slow things down, just take a minute or two, just to collect myself, so often I could save myself from disastrous life decisions. Such a profound yisod. And therefore, again, same with the Kohanim. The Kohanim, they're good people, they're great people, they're holy people, short fuse, give them a protracted process. So by the time that the process runs its course, I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It was true the Kohanim is just a model to be replicated by us also. So we all face tovos, we all face desires that we feel we can't overcome and we don't overcome. And sometimes I'm always butting heads with my Yetzer Hara, and the Yetzer Hara is always winning. Maybe the strategy is not to say, no, I'm not sinning. I know that sounds crazy. I am going to sin, but I'm going to sin in 5 minutes. I'm going to take the get mukusher approach to chet. And I'm just going to pump the brakes a little, give myself a little bit of time. Sometimes just that little bit of time, I'm able to collect myself, I'm able to pull myself together, and then I'm able to resist. I recognize this is not worth it. This doesn't make any sense. Pull myself together, resist the temptation. Incredible. So therefore, what the Gemara says, so the rabbis created this get mukosher in order to give the Kohen a little bit of time to cool down. But then by the time, again, this was a much longer process. And therefore, by the time the Kohen would get to the end of the get mukosher, he'd calm down already, realize this is ridiculous. So therefore, get mukosher is not a doraisa, get mukosher is a derabanan. And again, just to point out, the genesis of get mukosher was in divorce documents. But once it existed in divorce documents, they applied it to all documents. So the Gemara says, Hatinach Gittin, Shtaros Meikel Meimar. But 1 second, so that's fine. So now I know there's a concept of a get mukusher by a divorce document. How do you know to take that model of shtar and apply it to all other shtaros? It's simple. Kadesh lo tachlok ben gittin l'shtaros. In order not to make a distinction between gittin and other documents. And other documents, they will say now, what are we concerned about? What we're concerned about over here is like this. That if halacha l'maisa, it creates documental confusion, document confusion, right? Certain documents write like this, certain documents write like this. So once the rabbis innovated this concept by a get for a woman, they created this new model of shtar. And once they created this new model of shtar, ultimately, again, it can be used for all types of shtaros, because once you start making distinctions, is the moment you create confusion, and confusion ultimately, again, could lead to mistakes in the way we create our shtaros. Okay, beautiful. Says the Gemara, Heichon Eidin Chosmin, where do the witnesses sign? On again, because Rav Huna Omer, Bein Kesher LeKesher. Rav Huna says, between one fold and the next. Now, the Rashban points out where the Havamina is, that Rav Huna means on the front side of the shtar. So you write, blank line, which signature of a witness, right? Then line, blank line, signature of the witness, and it's all on the front side of the shtar. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar Achori Haksav. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, no, the witness is signed on the back side of the shtar, opposite the writing. Okay. Amalei Rami bar Chamla Rafista. The Rav Huna Daran ben Kesher LeKesher. Kasak Alaytem ben Kesher LeKesher Megavoy. So now we assume over here, like we just wrote, when Rav Huna says that the witness is signed being kesher lekesher, literally again between one sewing and the other sewing, right? So in other words, remember again, you have a line of writing, blank, you sew it, and the witness is signed. Sounds like everything is happening on the front side of the shtar. Here's the problem. v'ha'ahu mekosher deka'asa lekamei d'Rebbe v'amar le'ein zman bazeh. There was once a get mekosher that was presented in front of Rebbe, and Rebbe says, oh, there's no date on the document. Amar le'Rebbe Shimon Rebbe, Bar-Rebbe, l'Rebbe, Shema ben Ksharav muvla. Maybe the date is there. It was just maybe written in one of the folds and it was tied up. So just untie it and you could find the date. You could find the date. Palye, they untied the shtar. Bechazye, and they were able to see the date. Vim Isa. Now, if it's true that the witnesses are signing on the front side of the shtar with the text that's there, Ein zman bazeh, ve'ein eidim bazeh miboile. Then the Kash, when they saw this document, they should have said, we can't see the date and we also can't see the signatures of the witnesses, right? Because they would have been sewn together. No, no, no. Rav Huna did not mean that the witnesses were signing on the front side of the document where the text was. Rather, Rav Huna also agrees that they're signing on the back of the text. So what we're going to see essentially is Rav Huna and Rabbi Yirmiyah both agree that on a get mekosher, the witnesses are signing on the back of the document. So there's the text, and then there's the back, and the witnesses are signing on the back. The machlokes over here, and we're going to further clarify this in tomorrow's daf, but the machlokes seems to be where exactly on the back are they signing. So Rav Huna says ben kasher lekasher, which sounds like in the folds that are ultimately being sewn shut. And Rabbi Yirmiyah says achori haksav, opposite the writing, opposite the written lines, right, which are not the parts that are folded closed. So again, we'll further clarify this in tomorrow's daf. But everyone is agreeing that halacha l'maisa, the signatures are on the back side of that. But we'll say a little bit of a shorter daf today. We'll stop over here for today. Wishing everyone a good Chodesh. Look forward to seeing everyone soon. Have a wonderful day, a meaningful and incredible and uplifting Rosh Chodesh Kislev.